Ladies and gentlemen, the author of the patch that is on my keyboard right now.
Oh my God, I forgot about it.
He did not personally install this. It came with a board. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the best keyboard players in the world. You've seen him with Nowhere, with Mark Juliana, with Corey Henry, of course. One of my favorite keyboard players and a good friend. This is Nick Semrad. How's it going, man?
Dude, good morning.
Dude.
Cheers.
I hop in the Denny's.
Cheers. I love it.
The Denny's cup. Both sides of the aisle.
Yeah, I've been trying to do like single shot Americanos because there's less caffeine than
What were you doing
coffee.
before?
Coffee. And coffee has like 3 or 4 times the caffeine content.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, because espresso is more concentrated, but there's way less of it.
Right.
So you're going to get full on.
You're going to be caffeinated.
Hell yeah.
Well, we're all the better for it because I have a feeling that I think you and I are a little similar in a sense of like we're neurotic individuals that love to talk about harmony and just like go crazy.
Yeah.
And so I thought we could just play some piano and just like talk about it honestly.
I'm down. Yeah, I'm definitely down. You want me to play? Is this noisy piano?
Yes, it is. Should we get you some more volume in here?
I have to remember how this.
Too hot. Woo! Oh, do you need a sustain pedal? I think there's one right here. Did I plug it in yet?
My classical teachers told me I wasn't supposed to use it.
Yeah, I remember I took a piano lesson with Jeffrey Kiefer one time. He said the same thing.
Yeah, I'd like get killing without it,
Yeah.
which I don't know if I agree with, but
Dude, I remember the first time we met was well, I don't know if this is the first time we met, but one of the first times we hung out was at Lewis Cole's house, and I remember
that was definitely the first time.
Was that the first time?
Because I remember I knew who you were, I had heard your music and was a fan already, and then like saw you at that party, and I remember that party had like 10 of the best keyboard players I've ever heard.
Yeah. Who was? Let's run down the list.
It was like Fishman was there, Jacob Mann was there.
I think Sherman was there. Was Sherman there? Was Silverman was there?
And I mean, he's not a keyboard player, but Nick Hakim was there, and I just always have to point out because he's a legend.
Justin Brown. I met Justin Brown that night.
Yeah.
That was a legendary party. Keek was there, of course.
Oh my God.
Wait, keyboard players. There were some other ones too. But yeah, it was nuts. I remember you and Silverman were Jake Silverman were AKA
Jake
Button
Silverman.
Masher, as it were.
Mm-hmm.
For those of you who don't know him by his government name, Button Masher.
He tricked me, by the way.
What do you mean?
He tricked me because I believe like shortly after that, he's like, man, I got to get a lesson. And I was like, oh yeah, cool, come over.
Oh.
And then he came over and just everything he played was better than me. And I was like,
God.
That's damn it, Jake, you're so good, man.
That's so Jake.
I was like, what do you want?
I mean, you guys could both show each other a lot.
He's amazing.
But I think truly one of the best piano players I've ever heard for sure.
The left-hand stuff is wild.
Left hand is wild. He's got like the super thorough approach to harmony. But both you guys had something that I'm a fan of. By the way, Nick is a guy that I take lessons from time to time. I took one formal lesson from you at your house, but there have been much more informal lessons. And one of them was at this party. I just remember we were playing like Barry Harris stuff, or I think maybe that was more Silverman.
Yeah, I think Silverman's pretty deep in the Barry Harris stuff. I think I had like just dabbled with it at the time because I didn't spend. Jazz and I have an interesting relationship, and so I think anytime I get too deep into it, my body goes ah.
Yeah, it's similar for me too. I guess you were doing. It's funny. I was on the last episode of the podcast. I got some questions about triad pairs. And then as I was talking to you the last few days about coming in today and playing some keys, I was remembering just a lot of like really cool church stuff that you do, like just for example, like this really simple thing that's very common where you play. So I'll play a little higher. Maybe.
Oh, the 1-2-1. Yeah. Oh yeah.
You know that stuff.
Yeah.
And just like the way that you can like. I mean, I just remember you were just like tearing it up this one time. You were showing me all the stuff you could do with that.
It's all like melody things like that. That's the thing that I think people miss about chords is that most of the time they're just helping a melody, and the times where they're most effective, they're helping a melody. I mean, there's comping, which is its own thing, but sort of not, because you're still supporting a melody. You're still like, okay, that thing's over there. Let me accentuate it. Right. And so like, it's funny when I started diving into all these like all these little moves. Like it's all like when you hear it, it's like it's just like corny melodies sometimes, but they sound interesting because there's a bunch of stuff moving. Yeah, I mean it's and I think those things too, like when you're in positions where you're like kind of not in a friendly key. That's not the word I want to use, but you know what I mean. Like if I'm playing like a E7 or something, and then I do like these things,
like C stuff over.
Yeah, it's like, but those moves over like they just come out as like being this really interesting, like, oh, what are you doing? And like, and I'm just going, like it's just a melody. Yeah. And you're picking like a diatonic, you're picking a scale, you're picking an idea, and then you're just moving kind of relatively underneath it. So I don't know. I think a lot of the church stuff seems more complicated than it actually is. I mean, maybe music in general is just that, but it sounds really cool because of the athletics and because of the like positioning of like, okay, I'm doing this in like a really intense moment in music, but then you really dial it down and you're like, I'm playing C, D, C, D, C minors, like it's the same shit over and over again. So I don't know. It's I always feel like a weird version of like, this is interesting, but also not. Yeah. It's you get to a point with harmony and theory in general where it kind of like becomes demystified, and you're like, oh, that's it. Like even the prospect of like playing out, like it's just not in. You're like, how do I play out when I'm in C? I'm like, don't play in C. Like just play like
something else.
And like it sounds like, oh, damn, that was really cool. It's like, well, out.
Right.
Out,
dude,
not
totally.
in. Like
yeah, it's like, it's funny. I don't want to be the bearer of bad news. But yeah, I think a lot of times when I'm teaching people these sorts of things, again, how to play out, how to play something interesting, there's like that dichotomy of like harmony is both, you don't want to tell people it's not interesting. Yeah. You don't want to turn people away.
For sure.
But then at the same time, I think it is a encouraging notion that like it's pretty manageable. Yeah. Like there's only 12 notes.
Yeah, you don't have that many options. They just repeat a lot. It's interesting. Like the people I've played with, particularly, like I think about Corey, I think about Lewis Cole a lot here too.
Oh, dude, he's low key.
His harmony's as wild
not even
as
low key. Yeah, he's an amazing keyboard player from that perspective.
But the funny thing about both of them, and I hope neither one of them would mind me saying this, is but they don't really like think of it. They don't really think of it how a lot of people think they think of it. Mm-hmm. Like when I hear Corey give master classes, and sometimes I'll just sit in the room because I'm still a fan because he's amazing.
One of the greatest players ever.
But he'll, people will be like, hey, how do you think of these chords? And he's like, like it's just a lot of like, there's multiple ways. It's like, I heard it, copied it, liked it, know? And so the analysis stopped at, you felt this made you feel something. Yeah. And I think there's like a huge lesson in that, like, we were talking before the podcast started just about the pathways into harmony and how people think about it, and how it's really easy to get caught up in the like, this emotion has this chord and this emotion has this chord, and that's true, but also it doesn't need to be that. It can be as simple. Like the reason I brought Lewis up is because the first time I ever played with him, there was some chord. It was like a weird chord that had firsts and fifths in the oscillators, so it was doubled.
Oh yeah,
it was like something
should we make one of those?
Yeah,
right now?
It's like a.
By the way, is this patch okay for you? I just picked one that said NS on it because I thought it'd be a fun way to start.
I'm gonna do that.
Dude, listen to this tone you just dialed in. Sounds so good.
Okay, so if you take not that one, if you take a like I have the first oscillator is here, second oscillator is
like
here,
a fifth above,
right?
Yeah.
So if you play both of them and then you place it like even a simple chord like a C major 7,
It's gonna sound
way
Lydian.
more like
Yeah, right.
like
right,
now
right.
now you have this thing, but
Right,
in one
sounds
hand.
Lydian.
So then when you start like doubling that, like with other stuff, like I'm playing C, E, G, B, D, E, G, but that whole joint is doubled up a fifth. So I think like it was the combination of that vibe was happening, and also there's just a lot at that point of the music. There was a lot of information in the recording. So I hit him up and I'm like, hey man, what's this chord? Like, I just want to make sure I'm getting it. And he had no idea how to explain it to me other than like, here's a picture of the MIDI file.
That's hysterical.
Which is so killing. Like to me, it's just like, dude, he has, like, I would be like, oh yeah, C major 7, you play a G triad on top. Like my brain goes to like, here's the language. And his language was just like, I don't know, I sit in front of a computer and here's what it looks like. And so the lesson there is like, it really, you take that, you take the Tom Yorks of the world that have no, like, what's an E? And he's like, like that vibe. Or Corey even, like, that, not to generalize the church scene, but there's a lot of this, like what's this chord? You know, it's like a Doobie Powell-ish, like, dark 5 chord to a C. And, like, they'd be like, oh, yeah, it's G. It's like, well, yeah, that's in there. There's a G.
Right.
But there's a hell of a lot more than that too.
Yeah.
You know, like G13 sharp 11 flat 9 would be what I would say.
Yeah, me too.
But they just think of it as like, oh, it's it's G, but it's the weird one.
I mean, if it works, it works.
Yeah, I mean, it's just it's beautiful to me because it just makes the harmonic work have like 18 ins. You know, it's like the theory way in is a way in, and there's people who do that, who manage their way to beautiful stuff. I'm sure, I don't know Brad Meldau, but I'm certain that someone like him knows exactly what this chord is called.
Oh yeah.
You know?
Oh yeah.
So maybe that was his way in, but then you also have the Coreys and the kind of church players and the Lewises of the world who are like kind of self-taught, who are like,
Yeah.
and they ended up at the same place, you know, like it's beautiful, really.
I mean, if you think about it, I mean, just, the word G7, sharp 11, flat 9 is, just a word.
I
mean, it's all on the keyboard. It's all here.
Yeah.
This is a visual representation of our harmonic system. So if you know this visually, whether you know the words for everything or not, you're going to have to learn this thing. You know what I mean? And there's I think there's just like, there's different understandings of what we call things, but at the end of the day, it's all the same. I mean, as long as but you really have to know your stuff.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's just the finding out like what is the thing that you must know, because I keep having that challenge. Like I'm trying to remember. There's this Instagram account. Like, is it like Dust to Digital or something? Have you seen that? Where they play like old clips. Or they'll play like kind of rare clips of people playing interesting things, like you'll see an old like 30s piano player that you've never heard of.
Is it
like
all
playing.
Piano, or is
it's
it?
It's a bunch of music, a bunch of music. But like you'll see people with like 2 fingers playing guitar, or like 1 hand, 4 fingers playing like blitzing, and I'm like, damn, okay, so they didn't need all the tools I had. Maybe I don't need them either. And it just keeps getting shorn down to where it's like, then you'll see this baby who's like, doing this vibe. And then you're like, damn, like that's 2 fingers, and that baby obviously doesn't know what that joint is called,
Dude, I saw a video very recently that I can't remember how I came upon it, but this guy literally had posted on Instagram and it said the first piece I've ever written. It's like, this is my first piece. And I had been looking at his page, and like literally he'd been like just posting videos of him playing piano for like 1 year. He's been playing for 1 year, and he's like, this is the first piece I wrote. And I listened to it and I was like, damn, that's better than the thing I wrote today. Like, I should just steal this. I should steal this. Dude.
Yeah, man, it's really...
because it was just like a really simple melody. And like, because he's because sometimes you write things just based on, sometimes it's just based on what you know.
Yeah.
And then what you know, if it's a lot, if there's a lot of like, for me, when I write, there's a lot of distractions. There's like a tendency to be like, "Ooh, I should do this. Ooh, I should do that. I should do that because I know how to do this thing and that thing." And then at the end, you're like, "Oh wait, this is kind of like cloudy. Like the idea, the character of this is like shrouded in like too much detail or too many whatever." And this person was unburdened by that,
Dude.
and it sounded so good.
I mean, it's like the BB King thing, you know, like you have these famous blues guitar players that like very obviously didn't know theory or a ton of chops or a ton of notes or whatever, and they're just smacking you with like 2 notes on a solo.
Oh yeah.
You know, like there's just nothing happening. Or like, I mean, there's a reason like punk music resonates with people, and it's like 2 chords most of the time. Like, like bar chordy, like open tuning, you know, like, so I don't know. I have this, I like the path that I took in terms of like, all right, I learned classical, I learned theory, blah, 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 got to a certain place. But I also like the humility that comes with like, oh, there's other people that got there without that. So I should, the lesson for me is like, don't rely on it.
Yeah.
Like even synthesis. I mean, like, you know, you take, I'm gonna do a very simple.
Go for it.
I can't remember the shortcut for initialized patch, but
dude, to have you and J3PO back to back is so sick.
What is that? Man, I wish I could remember the in it.
I need to get Jacob back in here with a Juno, dude. It's such an important skill set to also be able to do this.
Yeah, it's really helpful. So like even something like this, right, where we have.
Pair of sawtooths with the cutoff.
Yeah, and I'm just on the I turned the mix down, so I'm just on the first sawtooth.
Okay.
Like even something like this, no resonance. There it is.
Super bright.
Yeah, so like this type of thing to me, like is a very different. Like you can kill piano. Man, I'm trying to remember. I had a very clear reason of going here, and I'm like, damn, how did I get here?
Shoot, we were talking about approaching things simply. People writing better songs.
Okay, yeah. So simple stuff. It's like this board can do a trillion things. It can sequence like polyrhythmically, like it goes deep in terms of pulse width, all the synth shit, right? But it also does like sawtooth wave. Like this is like James Blake made a whole record of just like I mean, he wasn't playing church chords, but like, well, sometimes he was.
Sometimes, yeah.
And it's like that's literally a sawtooth wave with like one piece of programming, and it's just moving the sustain knob down. Like there's nothing it's the most basic patch, one knob turn, you know, or like old Moogs, like you literally turn them on and they're like screwed up, and you know, like the knobs don't work, and you have these legendary recordings where that's happening.
Right.
So like there was no like knowledge, like not no knowledge, but there was no like theory, there was no clean entrance. It was just like, what can I do with this?
Yeah,
you know,
totally.
And it's just a really kind of simple. It's. Are you familiar with Jason Lindner? Do you know who's playing at all?
No, I know the name, but
So Jason Lindner's in New York. I have to bring him up because he's the perfect version of this. Where like I think if he tried to explain synthesis, it would be really disjointed, like in terms of the explanation. But then when you see him like turn knobs, you're like, this guy's getting to like the wildest shit. And it's just through ear and textural references. And sometimes he fails. Like I've heard him take things where he'll turn a knob and it ends up in a place where he's like, oh, and he has to start over, you know. But then the next thing he gets to is like literally the baddest sound you've ever heard in your life. And that was like Bowie's guy. He was in Bowie's last band. Like he's just a brilliant synthesist who doesn't know. Or at least I shouldn't say he doesn't know it. Like maybe he does, but I've never heard him like go into the explanation of you do the filter into the resonance and then you route it, blah blah blah. Like his vibe is all textural, oral. Like it's very generic. No, generic. Sorry, generic's not the word. Organic is the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Like it's just very like I'm responding to the way this feels, and no amount of theory is gonna end up getting me there. You know.
So then, is the skill set then just taste and just having a great ear and just even if I'm sure it's a combination of there's a lot of it sounds like someone like that does know a lot and then also is going beyond what they know at times.
Yeah, I think most of the time is probably going beyond what they can like orate.
Sure.
Like there would be no way of him being like, here's how I got here, class.
Right.
And so, which is the interesting. I mean, this brings me deep into the rabbit hole of like how much value should we place on the theoretic side of all of this.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of like teachers, a lot of school systems are kind of catching on to that now by bringing in people in master classes and like changing the way. Like Cal Arts is really good at this, where they'll have just classes based in experimentation, and like the theory part of it is very low.
Yeah.
And they're producing like weirdos who are really good.
Oh yeah.
Really good,
Yeah.
So I think people are starting to realize the limits of kind of the theoretical entrances. Not that it's, again, I don't want to demonize it, but
it is secondary to, a
lot of times.
like, because, for example, do you remember a few years ago when there was that craze about negative harmony because Jacob Collier talked about it, and I was getting flooded with messages.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Just people could be like, can you, like, just for my students, being like, can you explain this to me? And my first question was, do you like the sound?
Yes. Yeah.
And some people were like, well, I think they were just confounded. A lot of people were just like, oh, do I?
Yeah.
And I was like, well, like, why do you want to know? Because also, if you watch that video, what didn't get talked about in that Jacob Collier video, so at the very end, Jacob says, if you don't like how this sounds, it doesn't matter.
Sure. Yeah.
But no one heard that part. Everyone just, liked the theoretical idea of these words were really interesting.
Yeah.
That said, I did spend, a day learning a few different negative harmony ideas. And then I realized, like, this is not really a useful tool for me.
Sure.
And the sound is like, also, again, once you come up with, like, once you reflect a chord change into its like negative harmony version, it's still the same 12 notes, and it's still like a 3-6-2-5-1 turned into something like a B flat minor 9 to F minor 6 or a B flat minor 6 to a F minor 6 to a C, something like that.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, this is just something I can understand as like just without thinking the negative way. And then I was like, is this a sound I want? Sure, I'll play that. Do I need to think of it in terms of negative harmony? No.
Yeah.
But I think that's the right approach. It's like, it doesn't matter what the theoretical basis for something is if the experience is relevant to you. If you make the sound and you're like, nah, I don't like this, well then who cares what the thought process to getting there is if you're not going to use it. And so theory will always take a back seat to that. It's totally moot if you don't like the sound, or if you do like the sound, it doesn't matter what the explanation is for it either.
For sure.
You just have to learn the shape. If you like how a certain voicing sounds, if you like a voicing, you memorize it, and then when you're performing it someday in the future, you're not going to be thinking, oh, that's I couldn't even tell F7 sus4 with a third. I don't know what you'd call that, but it's C minor 13 or whatever.
I don't even know. Jesus, that's a McCoy Tyner chord.
Yeah,
that's how I describe it, as a bunch of fourths and then an A. And I feel I should do the due diligence of like, I do think that there's entrances in all of these are all doorways.
Right.
Like I have students who literally won't understand this stuff unless I go the numeric route of like, here's how the math works. Right. And I try and fuzzy up the like works, like the definition of that word a little bit.
Right.
But it's still kind of like,
why does that work? When people ask that question, I'm like, ooh.
Yeah. I mean,
it's
like,
a good question, but I just kind of disagree with the premise.
Because it's like, it doesn't work if the oscillator's out. Like this is cool if you're like, oh, that's my favorite chord ever, and then I'm like, I'm like, nah, do you like it? Same shit. You know? Like,
Yeah, it depends on the tone.
Yeah, I'm like,
context.
yeah, there's 1,000 factors. But yeah, I do think all of the stuff is a doorway, and I'm finding that like even in my journey forward with synthesis and because that's kind of been my focus the past couple of years, like there's times where I totally want the bookworm, like, oh, why does this LFO affect this thing in a specific way? Like I actually had one this morning where I'm getting into modular super hard, which means I'm going to be really poor in like a year. Yeah, it's terrible.
What a funny way to put that. Dude, I think we're going to be all better for it. Man.
Oh my
I
God,
can't wait to hear what you play. Bro.
I built a system in like a month, which is just terrible. But yeah, so I'm getting into that,
Bro.
And already there's like, how do I do things that on, you know, like on here, that's always going to do that.
Right.
Like there's a thing that is changing the oscillator frequency. It's literally mapped to that.
Right.
Permanently. I mean, I can undo it, but like 99% of the time, that's what it's going to do. And on a modular synth, it's just everything is up in the air. Like it's like modular is essentially you're building your own keyboard in whatever order you want to build it. So like the amp doesn't have to go at the end, the filter doesn't have to go right before the amp, blah blah blah. Right. So I was trying to figure out like how do I pitch bend, like literally like the most basic, like oh on here it happens. Yeah. But on a modular synth, I bought this modular that has a pitch thing that sends control voltage out, and nothing was happening, and it took me like 3 days to figure it out. And I kept looking for kind of the rootsy, like, oh, I just want to like hear it be done with a specific module that I have, and then I'll figure it out. It took the book explanation of, okay, you need to attenuate control voltage, blah, blah, blah. Like, it took that for me to go, oh, shoot, okay. And then it clicks in the organic way, and then I can experiment and get all fucked up and do the thing, right? So I do think, like, again, they're all entrances, and I think even musicians that play like that, which I will hesitate to name, but I think there's musicians who come at it from that angle.
Sure.
It's still beautiful because people are still getting into whatever they want to get into through that.
Right.
And then maybe through that they go, oh, actually I want to listen to like Tom Waits instead, you know?
Yeah.
Like John Mayer was getting 12-year-old boys to listen to blues. Like, who am I to judge that? You know, like it's a weird entrance in my opinion, but like if that's how you find out who John Lee Hooker is, sick.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, that's important.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Dude, man, I'm so excited to hear about this modular thing that you're getting into.
Oh my God, dude. That's so cool. It's a whole I'm doing a subtle pivot into trying to do more film scoring planet work. I've been doing a lot of it in the past couple years because touring is hard and I don't want to do it forever.
We should talk about touring.
100%.
Yeah, we should talk about that.
Yes. But anyway, so I'm getting into modular because I want to have a lot of like film options, and I think that planet there's a lot of like really intellectual sonic space that comes from modular.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, can we talk about touring? Absolutely. Because I think one thing that's really dope about you is that you've managed to, like, the gigs that you play are the coolest gigs. like from a playing standpoint, like from a people standpoint, you know, you're playing with cool people, great music, you know, you're featured, you get to rip, you know, you play challenging stuff that I'm sure is inspiring. Yeah, dude, what was the first big gig that you had?
Dude, Lauryn Hill.
I did not know that, actually.
First one, man. Yeah.
Sheesh. How old were you for that?
Tough. It was late. So I got a weird start where I moved to New York, I think when I was 27. So I had done I grew up in the Midwest and did a lot of kind of like regional indie rock touring and did that planet because that's what's accessible there.
Wow. And
then moved to New York, and that was the first kind of bigger I mean, I toured with, Gabriel Garzon Montano.
Yeah.
Really beautiful.
He's
music.
awesome. Dude, he's actually playing a backyard show here in the area, like
Really?
tomorrow.
Oh, dude, he's the best, man. Stunning music. So I feel like, I can't remember if it was him or Lauren, but they were both within like a month of each other was the first thing.
Wow.
But Lauren was the first big thing, and it was, my opinions are well documented on how that went, but she's tricky. Yeah. But it was, I'm grateful. It was like a really interesting experience, and just to put it in a positive light, when she's on, it's the baddest shit on the planet.
Oh yeah.
Like there's just a reason she's a legend.
Oh
and,
yeah.
I always tell people that there's only like two or three artists I've been wanting to, 2 or 3 artists that when I play with them, I would like fight for them on stage. Like it feels like you're going to battle. She's one of them.
Oh wow.
Like there's just this like, all right, we're fucking going, and you're like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
Like it feels like a war, and it's really intense, and when it's on, it's really good.
Damn. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And then where'd you go from there? How did you end up like with the Mark Giuliani gig? I mean, I could imagine how. But.
It was well, funny actually. It's funny. Corey was doing North Sea Jazz. Corey Henry, been playing with him forever now. We were doing North Sea Jazz, and Mark was there with his jazz group, and we met, and I think knew who each other were. And then he called me at some point that next week and was like, hey man, I know you're really busy, so I'm not going to ask you, but do you have any recommendations for like synth players for this trio I'm starting? And I'm like, wait, hold up.
Wait.
Yeah, I was like, wait, who's not busy? Like, what do you...
Back up.
I was like, I might know someone, and his name might be me.
Nice.
So I did that. He's, man, really beautiful dude, beautiful spirit, beautiful music. It's been interesting. Like him and Corey have kind of been my main gigs the last couple of years, other than the film stuff. Like opposite humans, like polar opposite humans, polar opposite music, but they balance each other out very, very well, and it's good for me to have both of them, I think.
Dude, nice.
Yeah.
How we talked a little bit about like how like, jazz is not your way in. That might be my way in.
Yeah. I mean, it is
church
edited.
Is church your way in? Is it, because I also know that, the way you came up, I believe, isn't your dad a musician as well?
Yeah. My dad had a, I'm going to jokingly call him a one-hit wonder, but he had a hit. He was on Dick Clark's American Bandstand in '69, so I had like a big hit, like regional rock music. Guitar player, trumpet player, singer. I grew up with a whole family full of musicians. I don't know. Jazz has been my way in at times. Like I have a really complicated relationship with it because I love it and have worked on it. And I also really despise a lot of the scene and what it does to people. And I think there's a gatekeepiness about it. Like there is in a lot of it's not isolated to jazz. Classical has this, rock music has this, every piece of art has this. But I think the jazz one I'm just close to, and I've seen it like really turn off a lot of musicians from continuing to play music, and that sucks.
Yeah.
Especially when a lot of those people who are the best gatekeepers, the biggest gatekeepers of jazz, end up like playing covers of, Radiohead and people who don't know anything about jazz, So it's a weird like, this is the way you do it, but then we're gonna cover rock music. I have a weird relationship. But it's also beautiful. It's like humanity, man. It's everything. It's like sometimes it sucks, and sometimes like Miles Davis playing, in a silent way is like one of the most stunning things I've ever heard in my life. And he's playing major scales. Is literally like his solo on 4 is like a scale. It's just like he's playing scales.
Yeah,
it's the baddest. You're just like, oh, this is amazing.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Jazz is my way in sometimes. The church thing, is a way into certain parts of it. It all ends up becoming soup at some point.
Yeah.
I feel like I've always kind of been an outcast in every part of whatever scene I'm playing. Like in jazz, I'm definitely not jazzy enough for jazz scene.
Yeah.
I can't play shout music that well, so I'm not churchy enough for the church scene. But it's also why I get into those planets, you know?
Yeah.
So I have to honor the weird feeling about it.
Damn.
Yeah.
Dude, let's talk some keys, man. Let's get into some like weird harmony, dude.
Weird harmony.
Let's just get into some weird harmony right now. Let's like show me something, and maybe I can show you something, and maybe we can just.
I've been really big on this kind of like I've been trying to get bigger into incorporating like classical. There's and this is it sounds very simple, but like when you play it in kind of an out context, it's cool. The pattern of like the like 5/4, 1/3, but doing that like if I'm in. Like doing like 5, you know, that vibe in B over C, and then continuing the pattern. So if I'm in C, I'm going like, but I'm going, and now we're kind of back in C planet.
That's so cool.
So it's like I'm in B, now I'm in A, and then if I resolve it in minor, I'm back in, you know, I'm back in C-ish world.
Dude, that's also cool, like, because you could even do that with C on the bass, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally.
Like you could go, I'm going to try and do it. Yeah, it's hard to. Because that's just an altered chord. And then that's just a.
Hell yeah,
that's just a diminished major 7. I never thought. And then
just correct it there. Yeah.
But I like this though. It's so killing.
Yeah, because it's like you don't even have to think about it as. This is the interesting thing about all the kind of like doorways in that we're talking about, where it's like you could think of this as just a weird kind of like passing thing in C, right?
Yeah.
But I'm thinking of it as like 5/4, you know, 1/3, and like A minor.
Right.
Kind of vibe.
Totally.
But they both end up at the same place. I don't know. I've been loving those kind of like simple moves
I've been
in
doing
a
the
different
classical
planet.
thing too. I've been kind of getting into that as well.
It's so Yuki got me hyped about that planet.
Oh hell yeah!
You know his music.
I still have not gotten into Big Yuki.
Big Yuki. I mean, his records are killing. You have to see him live though. Like
word.
He's the dude. I think I'm the most intimidated by musically.
Interesting.
Yeah, him and Jake Sherman are my two.
Jake Sherman, dude.
But same planet. I mean, there's a billion keyboard players I want to shout out, but like, I think as I was coming up, those were the first two that I was like, damn, I gotta shed.
Yeah.
Like,
dude, Jake Sherman for me, man. Oof.
Yeah, dude, killer. But Yuki has all the same like. Yuki's the. If we're talking about this is crazy. If you're talking about Corey and Mark as opposites, I think of Yuki and I think of those two as opposites, Yuki and Jake, because Jake is this like calm killer where he's I'm gonna sit here and like I'm just very zen and like playing all this stuff, and Yuki's like suspenders, like freaking out doing Rachmaninoff lines, like
yeah.
But they're both like the baddest shit I've ever heard.
Yeah.
Yuki was the guy in especially coming up in New York that all the keyboard players. I'm sure Julian would probably think this too.
Yeah, he mentioned him as well.
Him and I would just be like, "What the fuck is happening?" Yeah, really special cats, man. But classical, super classical, like
right.
Yeah, man, it's all really. I keep saying, "Oh, it's all really easy."
It's all really. I mean,
it's not easy, but the concept is like it's just placement. It's like 5/4, 1/3 in any context is like a beautiful. You know, it all resolved. Like this is just
that's so cool.
I don't even know where I was. So like if I do this, let's just pick a bullshit key. Let's pick C sharp. If I'm like.
C sharp minor, that is.
Yeah, C sharp minor. Like it all resolves.
Ooh, I love that. That was pretty.
Yeah. Like it all is. It's all if you kind of have your eyes on the like, where do I need to end up, right? Like it ends up in C planet because everything's so close together.
What if we came up with an exercise for that? What would that look like? Just all the different. You know.
There's a couple. Like one of the ones I like to do is you do one. So I start in C. So G over F, C over E, and then from here you say, all right, what's the closest next 5 over 4? So if I'm in C, now I'm in B flat.
So go down in whole steps in a way.
Yeah, so it's like my left hand is kind of the mover of like 4 3 4 3 4 3 4, right?
Right.
So
right,
4
right.
3. Now my 4 is sorry.
So the right hand has to go up. So you have to invert it a little bit every time.
Yeah. And I love drills like that because you have the constant, you have the thing that's like, I know where this is going to go. And then the other thing you have to figure out. It's like, all right, I'm here. All right, what's the next one? Oh, shoot, that's the next one.
Right.
Like I don't go into it necessarily knowing, it's kind of a deal with where you're at drill. And I think in reharm land and writing music land and improvising land, there's a lot of that. Like you can't necessarily have a plan. At least that's not the way I play. I never go into a solo being like, yeah, I'm gonna A flat into B flat. Yeah, it's like, no, I'll probably start here, but then like I'm gonna take it wherever it goes. And if I end up in C and somehow playing an F sharp, I have to know, shoot, how do I get from that back home? And so that's where those drills like, okay, if I'm doing that, like it just gives me ways to like experiment and go like, oh, here's a way out,
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, so I think that thing can be. I mean, you could even just do it in half steps.
Wow.
You just kind of do the 5 over 4 and you move the key down a half step each time.
Dude, I love these. Like, I love that idea of like when you go out, coming up with like a way back in that follows this kind of. Like these like compound diatonic chord changes.
Yeah.
Because like for me, like if I go out, I just come back in melodically.
Sure.
So like if I'm playing in C and then I play a line that's, for example, just like, I don't know, something random like
yeah.
I'll just come in that way. Like I can't remember exactly, but I could go this way, or if I'm here, I could go. Or if I'm here, I could go up, whatever.
So are you basing the changes on the melody?
Basically, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Actually, that's exactly what I do.
It's so interesting you say that. I haven't thought about this in a while, but when I grew up, that was something that I've always considered myself bad at that. Because I'm so the other way of like here's the change.
So you're hearing like a whole like harmonic palette basically.
So it's a lot of like if I play out. So here I have no plan for how to get back to C. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna play in B for a minute. But then I'm letting my left hand kind of go like, what's the chord that gets me? Like, okay, I should go. What's the chord that gets me back in? And then the melody is like outlining the chord. But I do think, especially if I was still in, I need to work on harmony. Like now I'm just like, I know enough to make 2 chord synth music, so I don't practice as much as I used to. But like, yeah, it would be nice to be able to think melodically first. I think it's more,
that's kind of what I do.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I also do think of like, certain like relationships. Like, for example, if we're doing like, F minor, half step up, half step down.
Yeah.
Minor third up, whole step down, things like that.
Sure.
It's not really, again, when you're playing, you're not thinking those words.
It's
like just kind of like, and then I like, for example, if I'm again, F minor, and if I play this note, I might think, like an A flat minor sound.
Or some other,
or I might think this, or this, like like shapes that I'm familiar with, and then when I want to come back, Actually, I actually did kind of harmonize it in a way that makes sense.
Yeah.
But it can also just be like and then I'm back. Because I just pivoted on the same note. So I do kind of think melodically, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like, I think that's super dope. I haven't thought about like, well, there maybe a little bit.
The chord is the lead dancer for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't do that often, but I should.
Yeah.
That's because that just opens up so many other.
Well, it definitely, I mean, everything promotes something. And I think that vibe for me promotes a lot of like if I'm here and then I let my left hand kind of go, it's like, okay, I know, like, I mean, that's a simple one because I'm just moving half steps, but like
flat 3 2 2 5 1 just makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Like for that kind of thing, it gives me a whole like a key. I talk about key planets a lot, like just key centers essentially. But I'm like, oh, I'm in F sharp now. I'm in C or F. Like if I'm there, I'm back in C. So like to me, it gives me a bunch of options right away rather than like the melodic thing. I think is like, no, I'm following the melody. So I have to kind of think what the melody's in. I don't know. It just kind of opens up the planet for me a little bit. But it also, the downside is that then I'm like all my playing is very like I'm outliney. I'm super outliney, which is fine. Like there's nothing wrong with it. But I very much default to like doing outliney things, and then I have to like make those interesting instead of just being like playing up. I have to be like do like little sequency shit.
Yeah.
Like that.
But see, that takes you to such a cool place though.
Like even when I'm improvising that stuff, it's all very like arpy.
Now that's some Nick Semrad shit, bro.
But it's that's
do you
that
do
thing.
that? Do you put it on unison like that and just?
Yeah, because then you get these kind of like non-piano.
That was so cool.
You can ghost note yourself.
I hear you do that all the time. I don't know why I never really even.
It's like I can ghost note it, right? Where it's
that's such a dude.
It's
so practical. And yet so unconventional.
It's real different on like
that's
if
like a technique that you've developed.
Yeah.
That it's so unique.
Yeah.
And it makes perfect. So you hear stuff like that usually because maybe Aphex Twin or whoever.
It's very sequencey,
like programmed it. But then you could just learn to play like that, and you've done that. That's sick.
And it's a way to the initial thing. I mean, apart from just liking weird electronic music, the initial thing was like I don't have. At the time, I didn't have the like, all the like the things that you're supposed to play, stuff. So I was like, shoot, how can I like play quick shit and have it like kind of be fluid? Which is like more fluid than me being
making sure my cordy is on right now.
I'm kind of like. It looks
plagiarize this later.
It looks wild.
It's so sick.
Yeah.
How do you? So for example, this is actually something that I struggle with. Is this thing you just did? Because let's say I was practicing some like left hand, right hand, like just like moving a line through both hands the way you just did, or like an arpeggiation, or however you're sequencing. But if I'm doing like say a specific pattern, like say 4 notes on the left, 4 notes on the right, or 3 on the left, 3 on the right, and it's like right? Or if it's like that's one thing. But then you're also going like 1 note, 2 notes, 1 1 1. Like, do you practice that? Is that just you just play it all the time, and then it like how systematic did you get about that?
Yeah, now that's a great question. Flying Lotus asked me the exact same question. I had the hardest time because I hadn't thought about it yet. So I'm glad he asked that at one point. So now I can almost formulate how to work on it. But I think the trick is to not be not be formulaic about the pattern part. I mean, at least I never would. Not that that's not a way to do it, because that's also a beautiful way to do it. But like, I was more like, let me provide notes in the scale as almost like ghost notes. So if I'm like playing some like, this is a very angular kind of like, I'm trying to think of a player who does it. McCoy kind of did some stuff like that, but like, it's more guitar-y, right? Like Jim Hall maybe, or like Grant Greene kind of stuff. I mean, they were super melodic, but they also had these kind of like these kind of things, or like Joey D did a lot of that kind of like fourth patterns. So playing those things, but then like at random spaces, whenever you kind of run out of a finger or something, like if I'm like, I can be like. So I'll just, if I wanted to practice it, I would say pick 2 chords. Like let's do like C major 7 and F major 7. I mean, it's super happy sounding, but that's fine.
It's great.
So if I'm like, I'm just going to improvise, right? And then at random times, I mean, you could just be like, I'm going to do... You could pick a beat if you want to be really systematic about it. But mine was just like, whenever it feels right to have your left hand interject, do it in the scale.
Right. So it's more of just like a supporting role.
Yes. So I'm thinking like, okay, if I'm in C major 7, here's my options. So I'm comping, but I'm doing it with like. Like there, I went like this, but I ended up on my pinky. And I hesitated because I wanted to go higher. So now I'm like, it's a kind of like buying myself time and cheating.
Yeah, for sure.
But it ends up being cool.
Right. But then I love that by like restricting the amount of notes for the left hand is like kind of a way for you to start building like.
Yeah. And I'll do a lot of like 3 note, like, I mean, this is a weird voicing, but I'll do like a CGE, like an open triad, like that kind of thing. And then let that be my comper. And then I'm just picking random stuff. And I think by not practicing it systematically and practicing it in more of a like react, go.
Yeah.
And not having a like, I'm going to do this note on this beat, which there's times where I have practiced like rhythmically, I did a lot of that thing. But with the soloing stuff, I wanted to have it be very reactive. And so I would practice it reactively. It's like I'm experimenting. I'm like solo. All right, ghost notes whenever you want, and then I would just try and make that fluid. Like I would still play that to a metronome or something. I also do. Like at the beginning, I was doing a lot of these kind of like broken. I love that kind of like.
Yeah, that's.
Especially if you're moving chords. Like that's all. There's no exact pattern. It's like fuck around in F sharp by playing random.
Right.
Like get to where I can do that. Now do it in F minor. And then by practicing it, you're like, all right, well, maybe I don't do that move, or like you kind of find what you like and how limited you want to be or unlimited you want to be, and then you just practice the fluidity of like. You just get used to
Sounds
stuff.
So good. Dude, there's also a lot of other skills that, and I know again, it's not about, because when you're playing this stuff live, you're not thinking about thinking about it. You're not thinking about names of things, but there's so many preliminary skills, right? Like there's first off just like your finger strength. That's like
you have to be able to do like that,
like
maybe
the Alberti bass, if you will.
Yes.
Shout out Jamie Lynn, my teacher when I was a kid. Anyway, Alberti bass or like, and then also just like I remember at one point in my life I had to go like, just for example, like this shape, like a 3-note shape, and be like, I need to be able to do this on every single, and then in all the keys, right?
I don't even know if I could do that.
And then different. But see, I had to be a little bit formulaic about it because, well, first off, that's kind of how my brain works. I'm the son of 2 aerospace engineers, so there you go. But yeah, what's funny? That's like I actually don't have the stock brain that I came with was not very creative, but I think I made it. So
you've done it. Yeah, you've done okay.
But I did have to be like, okay, like or like this shape, and then making sure I know that and all that, and then I had to be like, okay, what about this one? That's like a little different, because I can see like, and again, it's not about. There's many ways in, right? This is like the theme, and that any one particular way is not necessarily required.
Sure.
I'm sure with certain things it maybe, but in this case, I came to it a certain way, but I can tell that maybe you came to it to another way, which might be the more effective way. Is it? But is it just from? I mean, because like, dude, you're so comfortable in all of these.
It's all. Everything is a mix of. The terms chaos and order are very loaded, but I will use them in a musical sense by saying it's all a balance of those two things. Like this stuff, all the shit I was just doing is very creative, very chaotic.
Sure.
It's just like respond to chaos, right?
Right.
And in order to get there, like you're saying, which is very accurate, there has to be some level of like parts of that are ordered. Like I have to be able to be like, which like even just moving randomly through left hand stuff is weird for a lot of people. Like a beginner piano player is not going to be like like it's just a weird, like it just can't, So there is some level of like, okay, how do I practice whatever the hell that song is. Like there's some level of like do the same thing over and over again to build the muscle. It's the like if I'm running track and field, like I have to do leg workouts. It's the thing. And everyone has to find their version of which part is ordered, which part is chaotic. Usually people tend towards one or the other. Like you're saying,
That's
like
true.
You tend towards order, so you've had to build the chaotic part.
Right.
I'm I'm like the other way around, I think, where I'm like always had ideas and like, knew kind of where I wanted to go, but I needed the like, okay, I need to practice in, like when I would practice rhythm stuff, it was like do the exact same thing for 4 hours. Like literally.
Oh,
like,
yeah, we talked about that at your house
it's just
last year,
very like, it has to be that structured. And, with chords and like, like these guys, like I had to be able to like go through and have a way to be like, to a metronome to be able to finger it. But then once you get through okay, I'm comfortable with the order, now let's introduce the chaotic part,
Right.
And to find a way to make that helpful, because I think as a student you would hear that and be like, no, what
like,
the hell do I do? Yeah,
right.
I think it's like find a piece of the puzzle that you struggle at mechanically and just get to where you can ignore that. Like when I'm doing the creative part for me,
such a good way to put it.
The creative part, it will fail instantly if I have to think about the mechanical.
Oh yes.
Like if I'm like, damn, I don't know how to cross my thumb under,
Dude.
Screwed. And that's what birthed the need to go, shoot, I have to play ghost notes to buy myself time to move my hand up, is because I didn't have good technique. If there's time to think about something or you're forced to think about something, you're screwed. But I also think that necessitates like a second layer, and maybe we talked about this in rhythms, maybe we didn't, but something I talk to my students a lot about is like there's layers of practice, and the performance is not one of them. Like, don't practice at the performance. But you do need a type of performance to experiment. Like, so there's it's like, I think the layers for me were always work on the mechanical, and mechanical can mean a lot of things, but like scales, chords in every key, transcribing, or mechanical can also mean muscle memory with rhythm. Like, let me do this thing over and over again so I can feel it. Then there's a layer of like, okay, now I need a place to experiment with this in a safe space. And sometimes that's you with a recording. Like my mind goes to Jamie Abersol, like play the jazz form with the recording.
2,
yeah.
1, 2, 3.
Which
4.
is, that's, you can experiment and no part of that you're not messing with free expression because the whole
That's
intention.
such a millennial thing, by the way, to talk about Jamie Aebersold. We're very close to people having no idea who that is.
Oh, I'm kind of happy about that. No, it's fine.
Once Generation Alpha comes
Oh
up,
my
I
God,
have no idea who that is.
Yeah. Then it'll be some AI like Play 4 by Miles Davis, and then like the killingest recording.
Oh, dude, yeah, it'll just be like actually like a good copy of Tony somehow.
It's a whole other, but yeah, I think having that layer of like, okay, now I'm going to experiment with thinking of, okay, play that arpeggiated thing, but think about ghost notes. Like it's like a creative, it's like technical / mechanical creative gig. Because at the gig is, at least for me, and again, there's no right or wrong answers to anything in life ever, but I think like my subjective experience was I don't want to be at the gig thinking about philosophies. I just want to feel like what is the tune asking of me? What is the audience?
Yeah.
Like it's more energetic.
Yeah.
But there is a layer of like, I need to be in a place. I think about like drum sheds up in New York. Like I'm not a drummer, but there was these situations where you'd have 4 or 5 drummers in a room playing the same groove, and then every 8 bars the next person would solo. And it wasn't musical at all. No part of it to me was like, I want to hear that in a song. You know? But it was important to be able to hash out like, does this thing work? Like does this thing that I've mechanically mastered, hopefully, work in a setting where there's other shit happening, right? And all those drummers ended up being huge pop drummers who knew when to do that and when not to. And it came through a place where it was like, everyone's doing it.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, dude, I think that's an important notion because, like, sometimes we forget that the glasses have come off. Sometimes we forget he's thinking hard. Sometimes we think about, like practice having to be musical all the time. And that's just not the case.
Yeah,
like
not. Most of the time, not.
Dude, I mean, just think, if you just like break it down, like the different parts of the body, which is kind of what you just did. You broke it down into like the physical, or the technical part, you called it, and then the creative part, and you're kind of like segmenting the different types of skills that go into something. For example, like the hand doing what it does, like, you know, there's nothing inherently musical about me moving my fingers, but I do need to learn how to do that. And then, you know, because like, for example, I remember like one summer I was learning how to play drop twos, and I learned very quickly, oh, by the way, I remember someone told me that, I can't remember if it was Ambrose, I'm not going to say the wrong trumpet player, but it was some great trumpet player of that caliber, was explaining to one of my friends, another trumpet player, that he does long tones while watching documentaries, because he has to do them for like 2 or 3 hours. Sick. So he's like watching movies or like sci-fi movies, and meanwhile he's got headphones on, he's just going for like hours, right?
I had very similar.
And then I was like, oh, you know what? Yeah, there's nothing musical about that, but I mean, the result is musical because you have to figure out the technical part. And then I was thinking like, wow, that's actually, I should do that. I like what? Because that, like, I want to do that. I want to spend hours doing something where there's like a physical thing I have to do. And I remember I was literally just memorizing drop twos where I was just playing this and it's hard for me to play this angle.
Yeah.
And just invert it. And that summer I watched all of Breaking Bad up until the final season, which I then actually got to watch live. I don't know why I take pride in that, but that doesn't matter. The point is, I was watching this show, and for hours at a time, I was just going like boom, 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 da do da do da do da do da. Were
you doing it with a metronome?
No, I think I was just playing. I don't think I had a metronome.
Yeah.
I could have, but the show it was literally like, you know, like Bryan Cranston going Hank, and I'm like yeah,
dude, I did the exact same thing, but with Sopranos and Parker.
Oh, so I'm rewatching Sopranos right now, Nick.
Sopranos and Charlie Parker.
Best show ever. So wait, so Charlie Parker, you're...
So I would be doing omnibook, like, okay, I learned Donna Lee in A flat. Let me learn it in A, and I would get to I would need headiness enough to like kind of figure out fingerings. But once I had fingerings and I just needed to repeat it, Sopranos.
Yeah. Yeah, dude.
Like mechanical.
Yeah.
And it was almost, I mean, part of it was like, oh, I just need a distraction. But I do think there's some layer of like, it's important that I wasn't thinking about this.
No, you just need to make it automatic.
Yeah. And because
Yeah.
of that, like a lot of I mean, I'm definitely not a bopper, but like a lot of the stuff I do have is because I was like mindlessly doing it while Carmelo was being yelled at. You know, like it's just like I just needed to do this on repeat forever.
Oh man.
know?
Yeah. Yeah, that's that dude. So another topic that this kind of relates to, I think is interesting, is just like if you practice enough and you've done it then you will have done it so many different ways. Mm-hmm. Like that's a symptom of being a good practicer, I think, is that like, you know, if you've put it 10,000 hours practicing, like you should watch a full series of something at some point during those 10,000 hours. I mean, I'm kind of joking, but the point is like, there's like, if you're really committed and you're doing it all the time, there's inevitably there should be like I was talking to Luke about this, like you should have days where you're totally happy practicing. You should have days where it's not your favorite.
Yeah, awful.
And you're just grinding and you feel crappy, but you're doing it. And then you have days where you're neutral. You're just doing the thing. You have days where, you know, there might be some personal stuff going on. You have days where you don't practice at all because you've got mental health things you got to take care of, or you got family thing you got to take care of, or you just want a break, whatever, or you're sick, whatever. Like it, but if there's 10,000 hours of practice, like, you know, there should be like, there's going to be so many different like problems to solve and different approaches. And let me try this now. Let me try this. Let me, you know, I think it's a symptom of a good practicer. I know for me, certainly someone with like ADD, I switch it up. Not all the time. You got to do things consistently, but you know, I'm talking every couple months or so, I'll try something new.
Yeah, I mean, I think time doing something you love will make you better at it. And you know, every relationship has periods. I mean, I can speak from someone who's been through a divorce. Like there's times where the relationship is great and times where not. And I think that's just a very human thing with relationships, with anything in general. Like you're going to have times where like, this is a beautiful thing. Like, hell yeah, synths. Like, hell yeah, every knob. And then sometimes I'm like, I need a piano. Like I don't want to think about fucking clock. Like I don't want to think about control voltage at all right now. I just want to play a note and a thing happens. And you know, just the more time you can do the thing you love, you're gonna get better at it. Practice is. I definitely spent 5 or 6 years of my life going really like 8 hours a day, like 50 hours a week kind of energy. You know, because I was like, I need to be able to speak on this, and the only way I'm going to do it is if I'm like better than the level I want to speak at. Like I can't go to a gig and have the thing I want to say be the toughest thing I've ever had to say. Like it needs to be like no, I've said a more complicated. You know, like this is easy because I've also had to write a term paper. You know, like I've had a conversation that was harder. You know, and so I always think like you want to go harder than you actually are going to go on stage. Oh yeah. And sometimes that takes hours and hours and hours and hours and hours too.
Yeah, that's something they say about. I remember growing up playing basketball. That's something they would always say. It was just like go super hard in practice so that during the games.
Yeah, it's easy.
Things are easier.
Yeah. It's like running with weights on.
Yeah, you know? Dude, I've been. Man, I really don't want to come across as being harsh, but I've been seeing videos on the internet where it's almost like people are dissuading people from practicing hard. I literally saw a video recently, and I think the guy was right in a lot of ways. Actually, I did, and I liked the video. But there was an aspect of it where I was like, I don't know about that. Like basically, what he was saying was like, yeah, practicing 8 or 9 hours a day is just gonna like lead to issues. And I'm like, well, I think it depends on who. It depends on who you're talking about. Because I'm very thankful that John Coltrane did that.
Yeah.
Personally, and on behalf of millions of people across the world, very happy that John Coltrane did that. Very happy that Charlie Parker did that. You know, happy that Jimi Hendrix wore the guitar to sleep. So I don't know. I mean, this isn't probably an obvious answer, but do you regret practicing 8 hours a day for that span? Or I mean,
So in the last couple, I've gotten deep. I'm gonna go like this.
Let's do it.
In the last couple of years, I've gotten really deep into Buddhist study. My friend David Cutler, killing bass player from New York, Jesus Christ, he's good, is one of my teachers in that planet, and just got me really interested in it. It aligns with a lot of things I think and the way I think about the world, and is really beautiful, and it's helped me a lot. But one of the things in Buddhism is kind of like a lack of objectivity anywhere. Like they talk about emptiness, and every concept is empty. And I think I think about like, for instance, the term "you are beautiful," telling someone they're beautiful, right? There's people who that would harm. Like if someone is super arrogant, you don't want to be like, "Damn, you're beautiful." Like, or there's moments where saying that would be like, "Oh, you're gonna make their ego too big." But there's also someone who really needs to hear it, or like, right. "Man, I'm the shit." Like that can be a really negative, like, "Wow, that person, like, damn." Like they need to get their head, bring their arrogance down. But there's also someone who's like, no, you need to say that in a mirror 4 times a day because you have confidence issues, and saying it is going to repeat it, right? So I think the practice thing, and like, should this person do that? It's really, again, it's subjective. It's empty of a nature, because it could be the most harmful thing. I mean, there's people who practice 10 hours a day and then go fucking crazy and kill themselves. Like, not to get dark, but like there's people who go super hard when in reality they should have been probably sitting out in a park and listening to these birds. Their practice would have been informed way more by life and by beauty and by trees and beautiful people and friendships than it was by like by Hannons.
Yeah.
But there's also people who need that.
That's their mission.
Yeah. It's like there's people who practice 10 hours a day and have contributed to some of the most brilliant shit.
By the way, I've never done that. I maxed out at 4 1 year. Yeah. 4 a day was a lot for me.
Yeah. I would do there was, like I said, 4 or 5 years where I was treating it like a day job, and it was 4 break 4.
Right.
Which is tough. But like, I don't regret it, because again, it's just part of what happened, and all of the negatives and the positives that came from that all inform what I do. And I think if someone were to ask me, should I do that? The answer I always give starts with, it depends. Like what do you want? Like, do you want to speak fluidly on an instrument? And you're feeling like the technical part is getting in the way of that, then the answer is a resounding yes. If you feel like you have a bunch of technical skills, but you're struggling to improvise, or you're struggling to have like an energetic connection to music, or you don't know how to write or something, like the answer might not be yes. Like Dave, the bass player I mentioned, there was a span of, I played with him. He was in the lesson GK, which Julian was in. That's how I met Julian, J3PO. Mm-hmm. And Dave was always, even when I first heard him, like, super good bass player. But he wasn't like, when I first met him, wasn't on some transcendent. I was like, oh, this guy's like pretty good New York bass player. There was like a 2-year span where he got really into all his, spiritual work, and like, kind of hated music a little bit, I think, like had a weird relationship with it, didn't shed, came out of it, the baddest motherfucker I've ever heard. And I remember at one point, I wish I had the exact quote, but he was like, yeah, man, sometimes practice isn't practice. Like sometimes life is practice. And just his ability to go like, I'm going to connect energetically with this beautiful woman in the front row will make you play some other shit than knowing what F major 7, sharp 11, flat 9 will do.
That's true.
Like, I've definitely been in modes, especially when I was single, where like that thing made me really tap into some like weird energy that made me play some really special shit. And then gigs where I'm like, oh, I need to think about the form of this song. And, oh, maybe if I play that E over C there, it's going to... And it was just terrible. Right? So, yeah, I don't know. I think that's the longest way to ever answer that question. But
that's a great answer.
Everything is subjective, and everyone needs a different piece of advice at a different time. And all you can do is just experiment with paths, and you really have to pay attention to, like, is this resonating? Yeah. Because my path might be awful for someone else. Your path might be awful for someone else. And,
that's true. There are no absolutes in any of these things, are there?
No,
I think that's kind of I think where we've landed.
And it's the beautiful part of it is that you have people who ended up, Corey's band as an example. It's like everyone's life was like violently different. And we all listened to, like, even when we were listening to music in the car or something, like, I'm listening to, like, metal bands. Like, right now, they're not metal, but I'm deep in this band, Fontaine's DC, that's, like, kind of punky, new wavy rock kind of stuff, like, Irish band. Like, not one church, like, I think they even, like, said in an interview, like, making fun of R&B. Like, they just, not that. Like, the farthest thing from Corey's music that you would ever encounter. That's informing my playing in Corey's band at a time where he's listening to old gospel, or this person's, like Bernice Earl Travis was on a tour one time listening to like symphonic shit and then playing the darkest funk music of all time after listening to Beethoven, like, oh yeah, that's why it's great, is that everyone's like coming from here, and then we have this moment where it's like, whoosh, what do you got? Like, what's the soup taste like?
Oh, yeah.
It's like, oh.
I think that might be the coolest part of being a musician. I remember when I was a kid, it's funny, but before social media existed, I remember my dad saying to me, like, wouldn't it be cool to see, like, what Chick Corea and, John Patitucci on the way to a gig, like, what's in their headphones and what do they talk about? Do they give each other music lessons? God, could you imagine how cool that would be? And that was when I was a kid. And now actually social media exists where people could theoretically just tell you directly. I just want to say, if anyone's curious out there, if there's a version of me that's younger, that's watching this, a younger version of me watching this, I would tell that person, we are listening to all kinds of stuff. Professional musicians listen to all kinds of stuff. You would hear the most straight ahead dudes listening to, you name it. I mean, rap, like funk, punk, rock, Rage Against the Machine, you name it, just random stuff. When I, traveling with cartoons, that man's listening to all kinds of stuff. Nate Smith, he's listening to all kinds of stuff. It just gets, traveling with Luke Titus, he's listening to, drum and bass.
Yeah, I'm curious what he's listening to. A
lot of drum and bass. He listens to rock. Lately, he's been into Americana. He's been, like, listening to, like, old, like, he's been listening to, like, the Eagles, dude.
Dude, I mean, you should.
He's been listening he's been listening to the Eagles and America and Nick Drake and Crosby, Stills, Nash. Like, he's been, like, dipping into, like, your dad's folk rock Americana stuff from, like, 1972.
Dude, it all informs.
And that's, dude, and by the way, in his songwriting, you can hear, it doesn't sound like, I'm not saying it sounds like the Eagles, but there's a sentimentality to it. Mm-hmm. There's like there are things that are creeping in, but you wouldn't think of that.
I mean, it's all the meal at the end. It's like, it's not going to sound like America because that's not the only thing that went into the pot, Like if you have two people and they both start off listening to Beethoven and then the next one listens to Rage Against the Machine, whereas this one listens to like John Legend. It's a weird group that I picked there, but like already the dish is weird. Already it's not any of those pieces. And it's just it's so fucking good, man. I've been on like Abbey Road on repeat for like a year and a half now. Just like,
dude.
I'm also a big one song looped guy.
Me too.
Like I have I can't pronounce it, but there's a Sigur Rós song that I've been listening to on repeat for I think 3 years. Just every plane ride, just like 8 minutes of like really high Icelandic noises.
Dude, fire. Dude, I was listening to Daphne at Chloe yesterday.
I know the name.
It's a Ravel ballet.
Okay.
My buddy Eric showed it to me. Dude, Dude, how much Ravel do you listen to?
My classical knowledge
Dude,
is not great.
I'm going to sound like an idiot. Like, to people that already are deeply familiar with his music and listen to classical music, dude, there's an argument to be made, and it's ironic we just talked about no absolutes and everything and talking about Buddhism and emptiness, but I'm going to contradict that right now and say there's an argument to be made, and it's just that it's an argument. It is empty after all. An argument to be made for him being the best composer of all time. There has to be. You listen to this, bro. I'll show it to you after this, because if I put it on, it'll mute on the YouTube video. But dude, it's unbelievable. It's not of this earth. It's crazy. And he wrote it in 1914. And my buddy Eric is showing me stuff. And then I was also listening to Olivier Messiaen with him yesterday, who's like this, I think he's French. I can't remember. He's this composer who, honestly, these birds outside, who I've been having an eternal struggle with the past week. Although you can't hear them. He's like dynamic mic, so they won't even hear them. But,
I love it.
He would like transcribe bird sounds, but like including the overtones and like but it like led him to these like really, dude, the most insane orchestrations. And there was this weird experience I had where like there's almost an anti-musical element to it, where there's like not real rhythm. I mean, there's rhythm, but not in the way that we think of it. There's no like, it's not gridded in any way. There's like a conductor who's like, counting like 13, and then it's slowing down, and then it's like, what?
Mono neon shit.
Yeah. I think this is like in the 40s or 50s he wrote this stuff, but there was like this really, I like fell into the state where I was just like, just kind of like a trance-like state, and I was just like loving it. But anyway, dude, I think something that I just got to bring it back to the original point. Why am I talking about this? Musicians are listening to so much stuff all the time. I mean, it's not only our job and our favorite thing. It's also, it's just something that it's like a source of growth. We're like trying to like nurture our brains all the time. I mean, like that's what it's about. I think if as a musician, if you really fall in love with the concept of just like filling your brain with ideas, whether it's this like really cool arpeggiating thing you're playing, or the sounds of you name it. You're talking about Abbey Road, just like running that back, getting back involved with that for the last year and a half. Like I do think a quality that every musician needs, especially if you're trying to like reach the highest level you can, is just that not compulsive, but that desire to just like fill your brain with information and try to improve and understand more and more.
Yeah, I mean, and that can also come from, I mean, that concept gets heavy because that can come from peace as well. It could come from like I've had all this information, like what do I need to fill it with now? And it's like, well, you need to fill it with space. Like sometimes it's the opposite of all that, where it's like you've done the work, but now the soup needs to simmer or something. I must be hungry as shit. But there is some level of like, I've had tours where I'm all music in all the time and like, man, really deep into this thing. And then there's tours where I'm just like, I really want to focus on like, what does the tour bus sound like? And it's not coming from a need to improve. It's coming from like, I'm at a spot where like the improvement needs to come like spiritually, where I'm like, I just need to rest. So like what information will allow me to rest, because I think that's like it comes with being open to the moment and open energetically of like, there's times to improve, there's times to work, and there's also times to very much not do either of those things. And it's a really tough balance because you can easily go into the ordered approach of either one of them. Like you can be like, oh, I need to rest all the time. And it's like, well, if you're just sleeping all day,
if it's just avoidant.
It's like you got to, like you need to do something.
I am always laying down, man. I'm horizontal.
Yeah, but it's both. I mean, it's
I need
both.
to be more vertical, dude. I'm horizontal all the time.
Have you seen I'm
perpendicular? I'm perpendicular right now.
This is a quick aside to that, but have you seen that Marvin Gaye video where he's like crushing "I Want You"? Like,
yeah.
Horizontal was fine.
Horizontal was fine for that.
Slaughtering everyone. He's like, dude, I'm better than you. He's like, yeah, all you cats standing up, that's cool.
dude.
Yeah, it's dumb.
No, that's but that's kind of the whole theme of the day is that there's not one approach, and sometimes the right approach is laying down, which I don't think anyone else ever does, but it was the right move.
I've definitely seen Corey like at the studio, like doing one of these like feet up, like what about like just like blazing like half feet up on the desk, like dog in his lap.
I would love to see that.
Just crushing you, and you're like, why do I care about how I sit when I practice? Like, this is dumb. Like, he's like slaughtering me right now.
Dude, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Dude, how long have we been going? We've been really, really going hard, man.
You asked someone who has opinions to come to your house. I'm giving you all of them.
Yeah, dude, we've been going for like an hour and a half.
I love it.
Man, this is going to be so awesome to cut through, dude. I mean, I don't think I have to cut anything, to be honest. I think that was just like so free flowing and smooth. But I mean, I'm really going to enjoy listening to this back, and also I'm gonna steal your notes,
all the RP.
not that I can play it, but I'll look at it.
Dude, you have all the. I mean, it's all just a different way of looking at it. You get to a level, you get to it. There is a level at which you have enough technical, and everything after that is like, what seasonings are you putting in the soup? I'm going to talk about soup again.
We got to go get some soup after this.
Dude, I 100%. But it's all, like, people ask me like, oh, who's your favorite keyboard player? Who influenced you the most? It's like, it's me.
Just kidding.
I mean, like,
that was a dumb joke.
You think about... You think about you think about Julian, you think about Jacob, like all the people you've had on the podcast are all, there's a skill level they all have. Yuki, Jake Sherman, Corey, everyone is like, there's a skill level, and then at some point the shit they've listened to makes them go like, all right, well, I'm going to dive into this thing. I'm going to dive into this thing. Like, dude, there's no way Corey, who some would consider one of the greatest players in the world, could do goats. the tasteful stride stuff that Jacob Mann is doing. Like Jacob Mann is doing the stuff where you're just like, bro, how do you who plays like that,
dude?
And then Jake Sherman will play like a vocoder one note thing that both of those people are like,
dude.
It's all
Jake Sherman's a knockout with the vocoder.
Oh, it's dumb,
dude.
So
do you know what I love? Those two people that you just mentioned, Jacob Mann and Jake Sherman, what they have in common, the level of musicianship required to be funny with an instrument.
Yeah, dude.
Think about how good you have to be.
Yeah.
Just the level of expression required to be funny with an instrument.
Dude, Larry Golding's in that same planet.
Larry Golding's is
which they both
funny.
They're kind of like under his
funny. Errol Garner was funny.
Dude.
I think Art Tatum was funny. Oh, Fats Waller was funny.
Mm-hmm.
Fats Waller was funny. Like there's lots of evidence of that going back. People that are funny. Benny Green, I think of having a sense of humor. I don't know if he's funny in the way Jake Sherman will like make you laugh.
Yeah.
Like Jacob Mann will make you laugh.
Corey killed me
playing stuff
at a show.
It's crazy.
We were playing a show like at the very end of the run. We're all crushed, just beat up on the road, whatever. And like he went for something and it just didn't. He was like, and like over the mic he went, meh. And like it was just the dumbest like little thing, crushed everyone.
Crowd went nuts.
Yeah, it was just like I literally played a line, fucked up the line, went meh, and like dude, I couldn't even play for like 30 seconds. Like just the timing of it, like it's just some openness, some spirit shit that I think is important to have because there's moments for all of it. Like
oh yeah.
Victor, do you know Victor Borga? Do you know this name?
Oh. Yes,
I don't know why I felt the need to mention Victor Borga, but like,
dude, I got one of his DVDs for Christmas from my grandma one year, and I watched that thing over and over and over again.
Comedy music,
yeah, he's a pianist comedian,
dude. Yeah. It's
legend.
It's worth, yeah,
legend.
Jacob has a little bit of that planet in his vibe, I think, which is
for sure.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I love when he like has the tails and he goes to flip them off the bench and he hits his head on the it's just like silly stuff like that.
This thing, the like deadpan like I'm gonna stare at you thing kills me, dude.
Right.
It kills
or when
me.
he plays, he has a certain piece where he starts playing it and it sounds really discordant and messed up, but he's still playing with like perfect technique, and then he goes flips the music upside down, and then it's like Rondo a la Turk or whatever. Like he's so killing too as a pianist. He was unbelievable. Anyway,
yeah, it's all the flavor thing, man. They're all they've all tapped into some level of like, I am present, I'm comfortable enough with what I can do, so here's the expression. And I think that's the goal. Like if you're going to be a musician, like it's not career stuff is never gonna, at least for me, career stuff is never gonna be the thing that made it happy. Money, definitely, I've turned down and tried to do gigs that paid really well, and I really hated them and quit very quickly.
I heard about some of those.
Dude, yeah, I lasted 2 days with Katy Perry.
I heard about 2 days with Katy Perry is hilarious.
And to their credit, they were. I can't talk shit.
No, it's
was
not that.
Not
it was
me,
not. It wasn't
bro.
I don't think it was a personnel thing. It was just a music thing. It wasn't your thing.
I was like, I really need to be able to.
Yeah.
Really need to be able to turn my own cutoff knob, friends. I'm sorry, I just really need to. But it's some level of
2
like
days with Katy Perry, I'm dead.
It's some level of like the expression, being able to do it in a way that feels honest and present, I think is the goal. That's what I've been aiming at when I teach people, when I talk to people about music. I think if you get there, that's when the magical shit happens, because then you can then it's like every gig is a fucking therapy session.
Right.
And like that's even at home, like practice session is like, oh, I need to get some shit out, blah, and you just go hard for a second and you're like, oh, that was free.
Yeah.
Like that's the goal, I think, for me, is more of that in the world.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, Nick, this has been absolutely beautiful. I really apprate you, man.
Thanks for having me, man.
Thanks for sharing your wisdom and your expertise. And we'll have to have you on again sometime if you're open to it.
There's always opinions a-brewing in the old noggin, so you're going to get them.
Well, until next time, thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Thank you, Nick, for being here. Wherever you are, in the comfort of your homes, please make some noise for Nick Semrad. Thank you, everyone. Be encouraged. See you next time. Peace.
Hell yeah.
That was fucking awesome.
Yeah, man.
That was so